hate to tell you this, but I think this is true in life, but maybe especially in the role that we play. Sometimes the best ideas come from people that bother you and like annoy you. And you just have to kind of get over yourself.
And before you bite my head off, Spurgeon notoriously did not start writing a sermon until after dinner on Saturday night.
Awesome.
No, whenever
I've
they
done
do
the
complain a
long
lot,
shirt
I do make them
right.
sit on the couch and hold hands sometimes. They
Nice,
hate that.
bro.
They hate it.
Welcome back to the Practically Pastoring Podcast. My name is Frank, and I'm glad that you are here. The whole gang is here. I'm down here in Safety Harbor, Florida. Up in Baltimore, Maryland, we got Jeff Simpson.
Hey, everybody.
Down in Sumter, South Carolina, we got Delmar Pete.
Hope y'all doing well.
And together in the Morning After Ministry Studios, we got Andrew Larson.
Are we, though?
And Timothy Miller.
I feel like this is more the
Yes.
Practically Pastoring studio space.
Frank, it's sunny and 67 degrees. Are you glad you moved here yet?
It's a good day today. It's been a rough couple of weeks, but it's a good day today. Hey, before we dive in today's episode, we are going to talk about a certain pastor who is a solo pastor who's being asked by his elders to get more ahead in their sermons. And then we are also talking to a person who is struggling with some congregants who are saying rather hateful things and struggling to know what to do with those members. But before we talk about those on today's episode, I want to remind you, in about 3 weeks, we have the Practically Pastoring Conference. All 5 of us will be together. Guys, I'm really excited about that. We'll be together. We are excited about the Practically Pastoring Conference. It's going to be 3 days with friends and people from all over the United States to learn more about what it means to be a pastor, to gain some skills, as well as to be good friends. Guys, what are you most excited about for the conference?
I mean, we're going to eat really well.
Yeah, we are.
I'm excited about lots of things, but I'm kind of chubby, and I'm very excited about what we're going to eat.
We're all going to be together in one place, and that doesn't happen often. Digitally, it does, but we'll be here in person, and we'll be with friends who get us. And I'm a big fan of being around my people, so I'm excited.
I mean, the weather's going to be nice, probably. Yeah.
It'll be great,
deny it.
and it'll be at Lakeview Church. We'll have a ton of fun on a freshly paved. Hey, the parking lot is getting redone this week,
Hey.
so a freshly paved Lakeview Church.
Look at it.
Which
Well,
how weird
that's
is it
my
that-
biggest reason for going, actually.
Yeah.
Dude, but isn't it bizarre to think that this is the largest project that's been done in my history of Lakeview, like the most expensive project?
The asphalt.
It's kind of disappointing that
It doesn't
the
sound
most
fun to me.
expensive thing is
Like
cement.
$100,000 to repave your, like, that is just,
What
Yeah,
would
it's-
David Platt say?
That's
he'd be so mad at us. But literally, it's
He-
falling apart.
He
Like
would
potholes
say,
galore.
He would
It's-
say, "Stop giving your kids goldfish and give it to
Yep.
missions." Which is
Exactly.
literally what he
Yeah.
said.
And
once.
then he would buy
Directly to
a
me.
$1 million house.
Exactly.
Hey, we love David Platt, and the Radical organization. So with that being said, who's not going to be at the Practically Pastoring Conference is David Platt, but who will be is all of us, and hopefully you. Go to Practically Pastoring
You know,
Conference.
there's still 3 weeks. He could register.
He could register.
Good.
I mean,
He's
we
got
found
enough
out-
money.
Oh my goodness! Why are we
Especially since
slandering
it's
this
the
guy?
most affordable pastors conference there is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's what I
Go to
meant.
Practically
Frank.
Pastoring Yeah, exactly. PracticallyPastoringConference.com. We hope to see you there February 17th to the 19th. It's going to be a great time. And we just want to give a shout out to
Tim, is David Platt sponsoring the new parking lot?
He's the one who chipped in for the funding. Yeah.
Nice.
That's why we can afford it.
Him and
Nice.
Dave Ramsey.
Yeah, appreciate that. That's a lot of envelopes. Anyway, Frank, go ahead.
we want to shout out to our sponsor, Church Merch.
Merch for your church?
If you
David Platt.
want, if you need, if you need merch for your church, Church Merch is going to be your go-to. They are helping us with all of our merch needs when it comes to the Practically Pastoring Conference, but they can help you with all your church merch. Andrew, what are the things a church might need that they can go to Church Merch for?
Mugs.
Yeah.
T-shirts.
Oh, yeah?
Lanyards.
Yeah.
Whatever church you might need, whatever merch you might need for your church.
What about
Yeah.
buttons?
I bet you they
I'm
could.
sure there's
They
buttons.
could probably do
You
buttons.
got to put that swag in a bag. They could have the swag
Yeah.
bag customed out for you.
They could even make the bag
They
extra
could.
Sermon
swag.
tape?
They could.
Hold up. So now I don't have to get little Miss
Tape
Betsy
covers
to
for your
cricket.
sermons?
Yeah, I don't have to get Miss Betsy to cricket T-shirts for me anymore.
No, you should. Hey, Delmar, I'm just proud that you have volunteers at your church to do stuff because Andrew's still
Stop.
counting. He's
Stop, leave me alone.
Andrew also hand does all the T-shirts for the church.
You guys
Oh,
are really mean to
He's
me.
got a heat press at his house, and he makes all the mugs.
But
to
I
give
love
away.
that you go to Andrew's church, you get like crochet koozies. You know, they're like handmade. I love that.
True.
I think what I'm
which-
going to do is
which
visit Andrew's church and
represented
change
here-
seats a bunch of times. See if he can count me twice.
Which church here was praying over their quilting ministry from the stage yesterday? Just because I don't have handmade koozies, but
Look, we have had an ongoing prayer quilt ministry at Lakeview for many, many years. It's been a blessing to a lot of families all over the country. So yes, we had a leader
I like
step
how you
down.
spiritualize
We
it by
honored her.
putting prayer in there. That's good.
Yeah.
PQM.
Jesus shoot.
Prayer
We
quilt.
got a prayer cornhole ministry too. It's cool.
As long as you're praying while playing, it counts.
Yeah.
I was
great.
looking at Andrew's job description and it talked about keeping the restroom stocked.
that was a
It
job
talked-
description that I sent you. That again, I wish I was-
$1,300 a month. That's how much he's getting paid. $1,300 a month.
I
It's
wish
crazy.
I was recording when you guys were reading that ridiculous job description, because we should just send that to the church that thinks that their senior pastor should be stocking the restrooms and making the coffee before church every Sunday morning.
But the hours are flexible. So.
The hours
Super
are
flexible hours,
and which
but you
makes
have to do
sense
everything.
for
As
15
long as
grand
the
a
toilet
year.
paper's in there on Sundays, you can
Yes.
do whatever
Okay.
hours you
That's
want.
not
That's a big-
flexible.
Yes.
Hey, and you know what we've been talking
They
about?
get bidets.
Church merch. Hey, church merch. Thank you so much for your
I don't think
sponsorship.
they do
Church
toilet
merch
paper.
is regretting this.
You don't know that?
They might.
They might. They might do toilet paper. Hey, Church Merch, thank you so much for your sponsorship. We're looking forward to seeing you at the Parkland Pastoring Conference, and we hope to see you as well, the listener. All right.
And you wouldn't think
let's-
so, but there's a direct connection between the coffee ministry and the toilet paper ministry. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
Direct.
that's true.
He's not wrong.
Let's dive into this first question. This first question's on Facebook. You got a lot of traction. There was a lot of comments on this question. It said, one of my elders has gotten the idea that sermons should be written well in advance of when they are preached. I've been a solo pastor for 5 years and have averaged 45 plus preaching Sundays in those years. So it feels very personally targeted at me. For context, we have nearly doubled in the size in the past few years, and we're discussing new systems that would cause us to be more efficient. This was one he presented and has been very excited about. He is a longtime Sunday school teacher, but has never preached a sermon. I have tried pre-writing my sermons before, but the information feels less fresh, and preaching feels more performative this way to me. Am I being pig-headed to resist this? None of the other elders seem to have an issue with my current prep methods. All right, guys, this is an elder who wants to see his pastor get more ahead. How would you advise this pastor? It was anonymous, so we don't know if it's a man or a woman or the context. But
I'm going to take the hard prophetic line, I guess, and say you sound very insecure, brother.
Dang.
It sounds like you are maybe choosing to take this as a personal attack. If this elder is bringing this as a group of things that is part of, hey, we have a bigger church now, we need to bring some systems. Hey, maybe this is. I'm giving the elder the best case scenario and kind of giving the pastor maybe a little less than best case scenario. I'm willing to flip that over too. But if it was only this elder only saying you should do this as part of efficiency, then I could see how it could maybe be targeted. But if this is one idea of many of making things more efficient, then I think I would just caution you to not take things as a personal attack that you don't necessarily know to be a personal attack. Because what might be revealed here is that you have some insecurities, and the insecurities might be that you need to be liked based on how good your sermons are. And the fact that you're mentioning like he's never preached a sermon as if that disqualifies him to have a good idea about sermons also could be a sign that, hey, there might be some insecurities being revealed here, which are manifesting themselves in you sort of lashing out a little bit at this guy who might have a good idea. And I hate to tell you this, but I think this is true in life, but it maybe especially in the role that we play. Sometimes the best ideas come from people that bother you and like annoy you. And you just have to kind of get over yourself. So are you being pig-headed to resist this? Maybe. I might even say probably. Because there really isn't anything bad or wrong about being ahead. And I'm sorry, I just don't buy the preaching feels performative if I plan ahead. Maybe it does feel performative to you, but I hope you're not just kind of, coming up with stuff on the fly and preaching that. So maybe I'm just feeling grouchy today, but that's my take on it as I read this question just now.
I'm going to jump off your take and kind of run with it a little bit in the sense of, if this guy's an elder in your church, that means that if it's a faithful, if it's a humble, God-fearing church, then he's qualified to look at situations like this and make judgment calls. One thing I would be asking myself, and talk about if my insecurity got out of the way, why is he telling you you need to have them prepared beforehand? Sure, efficiency is one thing, or is this, you could also look at it as maybe it sounds like your preaching is just done on the fly. And this is a nice way of him saying something that's actually a lot deeper. There could be that, because sometimes elders, they know they need to tell the pastor something, and they know that it's going to be difficult to hear. So they're just waiting on that opportunity to say something gently. And if he's a godly elder, speak truth in love, this might be his way of trying to nudge and say, hey, maybe you don't seem as prepared in the pulpit. That could be another option. I think my last option that we'd want to take is to take it personal, because how do you really work with that? Because you're given no benefit of the doubt. The only thing that really can happen is bitterness can set in. I like Jeff's idea. Let's explore the situation and check our own hearts first. It could be efficiency. It could be that there's some areas that you need to brush up on preaching or that you need to grow in. So I would look at this as an opportunity. And also, this is a great opportunity for you to deepen the relationship with that elder. Maybe this is a systemic thing of the elder board. They're wondering what you're doing, that you could pull them into your world a little bit. There's lots of different things can come out of just this conversation if you don't react to it and instead you lean into it.
Yeah, I could see both sides of this. If you're preaching 45 plus Sundays a year, that's probably the danger zone for me. I would say there needs to be another communicator somewhere. Maybe this elder could be qualified and should be and probably is qualified to preach and share some of that load with you. But 45 plus a year is a lot. And if they do want you to get ahead in your sermon writing, which is not a bad idea at all, but if they want you to get ahead, they're going to have to give you some time to do that. So I think similarly what Delmar and Jeff said, could be a great chance to have a conversation with this elder to talk through what this looks like practically. Like on paper, this sounds good, but practically you've been preaching for 5+ years. You're in a rhythm of writing one sermon a week. So you could continue that rhythm of one sermon a week as long as someone else is preaching from time to time, because then you could start getting ahead as 1 week turns into 2 weeks, etc. So I understand the idea and I see both sides of this. I am not that far out when it comes to actually writing. The sermon calendar is planned out for sure. Like we know text and topic all the way through the end of the year. But when it comes to the actual process of writing the sermon, if I'm 1.5 weeks out, that's probably pretty good for me. If I'm 2 weeks out, that's great for me. So I think it's going to depend on the communicator. It's going to depend on the situation. You're a solo pastor, which means you're probably doing a whole lot of other things already. So this might be a big ask and you're feeling the pressure of that. So maybe just let the elders know, hey, here's what else is on my plate. If you guys could help, either hire some additional staff because the church has doubled, or if the elders want to take on some of that load of the additional admin responsibilities, that might free you up to be able to get a little bit ahead. So this should be a time for great conversation with the elders, in my opinion.
I don't think there is one right way to do most things. I think there's multiple ways to do things, and some people are really good and they write a series at a time, and hey, I've got this whole series written out. And there are some preachers who they finish their sermon on Saturday night, and before you bite my head off, Spurgeon notoriously did not start writing a sermon until after dinner on Saturday night. He spent the weekend study, but he didn't actually start writing until Saturday night after dinner. So I'd say he was a fairly effective preacher. I think Frank agrees. Spurgeon was effective. Like Tim said, I think there's a difference between being scheduled and being pre-written to know what you're preaching on and the topics, so that if you're reading something and a point jumps out, you can file that away for, 3 weeks from now, I'm going to be talking about this topic, or I'm going to be in this passage that connects to that topic. That's a great plan. I think that's very different from saying, hey, we need the sermon written 10 days before it's preached so that other people can read it and critique it. I think if that works for you, there's also nothing wrong with that. But to assume that one way that works for somebody else is going to just naturally work in every context is different. I want to say Kevin DeYoung had a thing where he talked about when he was younger in ministry, he would try to get his sermon finished by Tuesday or Wednesday. But when he did that, then he found that Thursday and Friday would just be taken up by sermon revisions and by, going and doing other things. And so when he did that, the sermon dominated the entire week, and there were other things that he had to do
It's a good
in
point.
his ministry. And so by pushing the sermon towards the end of the week, it freed up the beginning of his week to focus on the administrative things, some of the more personal relationship things that we're called to do in ministry. So all that to say, sure, if you have the bandwidth to get stuff done ahead of time, awesome, bully for you. And if you don't, okay.
Well, I mean, I don't know how y'all feel, but I was 2 weeks ahead last week, 2 or 3 weeks ahead. And by the time I got to the sermon I preached, it was almost like I was down the road on the third sermon in my head because I had just written that one. And I actually had to go and completely dump out 2 different sermons out my head to re-input the one that I had from 2 weeks. Or it was actually more work, if that makes sense, because I had to get back. And I honestly felt like I would have preached that one better if I'd have just been in that one the whole week.
Yeah, I think Tim and I and another person on staff at our church, at Lakeview Church.
Our church. You got to write that.
It's Tim's church, though. We all know it.
Did you stop it, Jeff? You're salty today.
There's a guy who attends the church who is like a master at Logos Bible software. And so he was kind of giving us like a crash course on how to lay out your Logos and how to best utilize it and stuff.
Like master class, like scary good.
He's like, yeah, he was really good. And one thing that we talked about was that the sermon writing process is very personal. And like the longer you do it, the more trying to change that process is going to be more difficult. Like even like changing the document software that you use to write would be like, I use Google Docs. So the idea of using Pages or Word kind of scares me. And that sounds stupid, but like I'm so used to
I only use Pages, and when I try to do things in Word, because
Same.
it messes with my head.
Yeah. And like those changes, the longer you've been doing this, takes a longer time to adjust. And so anyways, one thing that when we read that book, 8 Hours or Less, about preaching to write sermons quicker, one principle I think he makes in there that regardless of how you write your sermons is important is having deadlines. And so like if you at least like even if you are week to week committing to yourself saying I'm going to be finishing these parts of my sermons by this time of that week, I think is at the end of the day the most important thing. If you're finding yourself getting to Saturday night or Sunday morning and you're like cramming or you're staying up late Saturday, I think that's when the problem is. So if this elder, like Jeff was saying, if this elder is observing something in this preacher that is like maybe demonstrating laziness or forgetfulness or something, then I think at that point, just being more disciplined in your week, whether that is doing what Kevin DeYoung said and just saying, hey, Wednesday and Thursday are for sermons, so Monday and Tuesday are for pastoring, whatever that looks like. Like, I think that's what's important. And if your church requires you to create small group questions by a certain point, then getting ahead might be important, right? Like, I think it's very contingent to your church. I just know that like I preached for the first time in series at Lakeview Church, which is a big deal. People didn't believe I could do it.
I always thought you could.
And
I won $20.
And one thing I told Tim this morning was I was a bit insecure going into the pulpit because I had no critique process. I'm just trusting that like what I wrote and what I believed was good was enough for Sunday morning. And
I mean, to be fair, we met for a bit on Thursday.
We talked about some sensitive parts.
You had like two bits. You're like, Tim, are these good? Can I roll with these? And we're like, yeah, absolutely. These are great.
Yeah.
But we didn't do a full sermon review.
Right. And so I think like that, I mean, in a way, that's an aspect of what I've been used to for the last 10 years of sermon writing. I have to adjust because that's not the rhythm here at Lakeview. And so, yeah, to this person who's writing this question, I appreciate what Jeff said. I think if you are personally checking on your rhythms and it's not going well, then you should attempt to maybe try to get ahead or something, or at least have some sort of critique process the week of.
I know what I said was a little harsh sounding, but I think the big question I have is there's a relational issue that seems to have popped up here because
that's good.
Number one, why is this elder telling you this? And number two, why I want to know why it's being taken as a personal attack. If there is, let's say that there is bubbling under the surface a dissatisfaction with the quality of your sermons, maybe. I know that feels very personal. It is personal because you put a lot into it. But you may have to, and as hard as this is, one of your roles may have to be helping your elder to say something very difficult to you. You may have to help grow him to be able to boldly say to you, hey, I feel like your sermons are lacking lately, and I'm wondering if preparation is part of it. That may be part of your role to actually help someone learn to critique you. Because one of the things I've talked about with the elders that are here is like, everything is on the table. There's nothing that we can't say to each other. We have to be able to say everything to each other in order to help lead the church well. So if they're feeling like, well, we can't say anything to you about how bad your sermons are, so this guy is going to say maybe you should prepare more ahead of time. It could be that you're very unapproachable, or it could be that they are not bold enough to say it to you. And in either case, you're the pastor, so it's kind of your role to be an example of what it looks like to be approachable and to help people be able to say a hard thing to you. So I just would, to me, I would, all the stuff about prep and the mechanics of how you prep a sermon, great. I would really dive in on the relational aspect between you and this elder and maybe the elders, because it's the kind of thing that can derail you.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. All right. This question is from Reddit. The title, I wonder if the title is a misspelling, but the title says How to Help the Unwanting.
Help the Unwanting, great band name.
Yeah.
Like metalcore, late
Yeah.
2000s.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello.
For sure.
I seek advice on something that I haven't found some resolution with in my own community. We have a few members who are rather hateful and have become somewhat openly racist and unwelcoming towards other members or new visitors in the past couple of months. I've attempted to speak with them and inform them that God doesn't give us Jesus so we could treat each other that way, and that we should treat others with love and respect. They didn't care. They don't seem to want to listen or move to change their negative behavior. Now, some of our other members are coming forward and saying they don't feel safe, which is heartbreaking to hear. I've brought all this to my lead pastor, whose advice was, if they aren't willing to change, then send them away. Don't let them back, and cut talking to them, which is probably the only time in all the years I've known him that I couldn't see it that way. We're supposed to love and teach the sinners the most, aren't we? For they will be closest to God in heaven. How do I do that if they aren't willing to change? If they are so filled with hate? I don't want to give up on anyone, but I'm still so new in my role, and this isn't something I've experienced before, so I'm confused. It's confusing and taxing. What would you all do? How do I help them without giving up on them? And if they refuse to change or listen? All right. This is heavy. What do you guys got?
I got that we need more context because, I mean, yeah, I would love to hear the perspective of the people that are being accused of being hateful.
Yeah, what does somewhat openly racist mean?
Yeah, that's
pretty
by what
ambiguous.
standard?
So I think we need context, and there does not need to be nuance in discussions about hate, but there needs to be nuance in discussions about what is and what is not hateful. So hate is bad, but different people are going to have different opinions on what is or is not hateful. In my community, which I can speak to because I understand what's actually happening there, we have had conversations that some people have just been shocked by regarding immigration policy and where does the church step in, where does the church step out. And the easiest solution for some is to play the, well, you're being a racist card, and the other one's like, no, I'm not trying to be racist, I'm trying to uphold the law that exists. Where else would the church ever support someone who is openly defying a law? And so if that is what I'm reading into this, then I think there needs to be a whole lot more nuance in the discussion. But if someone is being purely hateful and is disregarding the spiritual instruction from their pastor, specifically with regards to their behavior in the church, well, then stop me if you've heard this before, but that's a discipleship issue.
That's a church discipline issue, right? Like,
yes, it is.
If it's, but I'm with you, Andrew. There needs to be more context. We had a guy come to our church several months ago. He came while we were singing the last song, And we have a security team in our church. And when someone comes in at the last song that's never been there before, I mean, that's just,
Do they carry
It's a-
guns?
yes, our
In South-
guys. Yes.
Rhetorical question.
Yeah, rhetorical.
Yeah,
But the guy walked in, and our guys went up to him and just said, "Hey, can I help you?" And he's like, "Here for church." He's like, "Okay, we're in the last song right now. Just letting you know." He goes, "Okay," and then he just walks outside, takes a picture of our church, and puts it in one of the biggest local Facebook groups and said our church is filled with racists and stuff because he was turned away at the door, is what he was told. That's just
Now, when you say last
factually-
song, you mean like end of the service last
end
song?
of the service, we're about to pray and let out, and the security team says, "Hey, services are over right now." Like, they didn't tell him to leave. They were like, "Come back next week. We'll sit with you."
You
Here's our-
missed it.
Yeah, you missed the service, and he took that as racism, and that we turned him away at the door. And the great irony is he posted it in this group, and a lot of people came in there like, "We know so many people at that church, and we've actually got new people at our church because we didn't take the bait." But the point is, the context is very critical. And if hopefully you have character to back up whatever claims are being made on either side. If there's a trajectory of, hey, this is kind of some racist people, they've done this before, well, then I will say it's a church discipline. I mean, it's a discipleship issue, but that is almost lends itself to first stage of church discipline. And it sounds like you've already done that one-on-one right now. You've almost gone to where you need to take it to the leadership, especially when it's an issue like that, because that situation is just, I mean, it's just sinful. So I think your pastor, because let me get this straight. The pastor said that they need to leave when he says they need to leave, who's he referring to? The accused racists, or the other people?
The people who are saying the hateful stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, then I would,
That's how I took it too.
yeah. So then I think the pastor, that's a lot of courage. Yeah, especially to look at his own congregate, say, if you're unwilling to be biblical and godly, and we're going to be welcoming in these people who need the Lord, that's a you issue, and you can leave. Now, that being said, as a pastor, I think that's deserves more of one-on-one conversations and sitting down and not just saying, well, you can leave, because that's not shepherding your flock very well. That's just running off the sheep who get a disease.
But it sounds like to me, I took this as this guy's an associate pastor and he's had those conversations and it didn't work. So he went to the lead pastor who's telling them, well, if they're not going to listen, then you can put them out, which to me, I took it as like good delegation by the lead pastor to let another pastor.
If he has that
I don't-
authority,
I don't
yeah,
think,
for sure.
yeah, I don't think the lead pastor has to deal with every person individually in this kind of situation. I mean, if he didn't witness it himself or isn't being asked to, I'm not saying he shouldn't, but I'm just saying I read this and took it as this is an associate pastor who is new at the church, so maybe he's kind of learning his spot, and he's hearing things that he is hearing as openly racist, which apparently the lead pastor is agreeing with, because the lead pastor is saying, hey, if they're not willing to change, then yeah, there is a time when, I mean, the Bible says you put people out of the fellowship in order that they could be restored.
Now, to take your prophetic lane, one of the reasons we could have some apprehension about doing this is because we're cowards and we don't want to tell somebody to roll, because then they're going to go and tell other people that pastor doesn't care, but we're caring about our own, what people are saying about us. There could be a level of cowardice, and I can mask that in piety and say, well, we should preach Jesus to everybody. Hey, these people have been Christians for 30 years. They should be the one preaching Jesus to these new people coming through the doors. So if I'm the one if I'm scared to have this difficult conversation, if this is a medium to large size church and you're the associate pastor, I do think there's authority for you to be able to do that. In a smaller church, that's why I was thinking smaller church context, a lot of times the lead pastor is going to have to handle this, because a little pebble makes a bigger wake in a smaller church, But if he's giving you the authority and this is a legitimate thing, everyone's identified it, and it is racist, then I would take this as a great opportunity for you to have courage and to step into this and look at this as a growth experience, but also leaving an opportunity there for the work of church discipline to do its role, and that is to bring conviction and repentance and restoration.
Yeah, I mean, he did say that they were members. These aren't just casual attenders being hateful and racist, but if they are members, they probably went through some sort of membership process at your church, hopefully. I would take this as a time to, hey, this is probably something we're going to have to address in the membership process. There there are expectations of our members that we might not have of our casual attenders. But if you're going to be a member of this church, yeah, there's going to be expectations. And part of those expectations are speaking unkindly or just being, downright nasty to other people is, should probably be an expectation of a member of the church. It also sounds like he's attempted to go through the church discipline process, and the lead pastor is also attempting to do that. I don't really disagree with the lead pastor here. We had to do this 2 years ago. We sat down with someone. They were, very hesitant and resistant and did not want to listen. And we said, we're so sorry that this, like, here's where we're at. At some point you can only go around circles so many times. And yeah, they ended up withdrawing their membership, and it was kind of a painful process, and we had to explain what happened to some other members, but that's part of ministry. Like, that's what we do. We have to deal with really messy situations. So in some ways, I kind of commend the lead pastor here for being pretty bold and taking a stance of we're not gonna put up with this. Yeah, there should probably be multiple conversations. I agree, and that you need to handle this in the most pastoral way you possibly can, being loving and gentle. But if there's just a refusal to, treat other human beings with decency, that's probably going to be an issue.
I think it's a really important distinction. You putting someone out in a church discipline, like putting them out of the fellowship when it's in church discipline, is not giving up on them. Those are not the same thing.
Not at all.
Because the heart of putting someone out of fellowship is so that they would see their error and want to be brought back into fellowship. It's the point of it is restoration. So
Correct.
it's never, he asked, how do I help them without giving up on them? Well, continue to help them as long as you can. Pray for them. That's not giving up on someone. And be ready to welcome them back with open arms when and if they repent. That's not the same thing. If they refuse to change or listen, you haven't given up on them. They have broken fellowship with you. Now, that doesn't mean the guy said, or the person said, it's so confusing and taxing. And I would just say to that, yeah, it is. Ministry can be confusing, and it's definitely taxing. And that's just part of it. So, you're called continually to suffer with Christ so that you'll partake in his glory. And that's, for us, that's part of what it means. The messy dysfunction of people relationally in a church is part of how we, as those who are called to lead in the church, as part of how we suffer with Christ, is dealing with people in that. So, I think it is just a hard situation. There's the way you deal with it in this guy's situation is to make sure that you are under the leadership of your lead pastor, who's got the primary, role of authority in this, and to be supporting that and whatever decision he's making. And if you disagree with it, I would encourage you to humbly bring that up to him so you can talk it out and maybe learn together about what it looks like to move forward. And, I just think it's just a hard situation, and that's kind of all there is to it. You just have to walk through it.
There's something to say about the lack of church discipline that most churches, have right now. It's like to say like, oh, telling them to leave is giving up on them. There's a low theology on church discipline, and this is where, like, I got a lot of respect for the philosophy of 9 Marks in regards of like high meaningful membership and a high view of church discipline, because at least, like, you might not like it, but at least they're consistent with it, right? And I appreciate that, and yeah, hopefully, I love what you said, Jeff. You putting them out is not you giving up on them. It's actually for the sake. That's what the Bible says. It's for the sake of their soul that they be separated from the congregation in order for them to feel the need of repentance. So,
that's very human. My two sons get in arguments a lot, and they'll be smacking on each other. And you know what I do? I make them go to separate rooms, and then one of them starts crying because he just wants to be around his brother. He just wants to be around his brother. He would have never known that, and would never felt remorseful and gotten to the point of apologizing unless I separated him in different rooms. That's church discipline, man. Sometimes you got to be separated into a different room so you can have some one-on-one time with the Lord, and he can work on your heart.
Yeah, that's good. Well,
then do you make them wear one T-shirt, like both in one T-shirt? Because that's awesome.
No, whenever they do complain a lot, I do make them sit on the couch and hold hands sometimes. They hate that. They hate it.
That's great. That's great. Well, I think this is a good episode. Hopefully, those who ask those questions will benefit from the answers that we've given. If you have a question that you would like to see on the Practically Pastoring podcast, find r/pastors on Reddit, because I'd be taking a lot of questions from there, or go to the Practically Pastoring Facebook group. And if you're on there, like the first question we read today, if you post anonymous, one, it gets more responses from the group, but two, it piques our interest to consider putting on the podcast. So we hope to see you at the Practically Pastoring conference happening
3 weeks away.
February 17th to the 19th. Check out church merch. The link is in the show notes to get more information about them. And yeah, we hope to see you here, same time, same place. I'm Frank Gill.
I'm Jeff Simpson.
I'm Delmar P.
I'm Andrew Larson.
And I'm Timothy Miller.
This is Practically Pastoring. See ya.